Hi everyone! Welcome to All Things Iceland, the place to learn about Icelandic language, history, culture, and nature. I'm Jules, and today I have a special guest, my husband Gunnar. Hi Gunnar.
Nice to meet you all.
And we are doing a reaction video to the Eurovision movie. It's basically called Eurovision Contest, the Story of Fire Saga. And it's a Will Ferrell movie, and it also stars Rachel McAdams, and Pierce Brosnan appears as well. Now I'm just going to tell you, before we get started, we are going to be talking about different things in the movie that you might consider to be spoilers if you haven't seen the movie yet. So FYI, if you are looking forward to seeing it and you don't want to, possibly hear something that could give away a plot point or something interesting, stop now, go watch it, come back, and then you can hear our thoughts. I thought it'd be really fun to do this video though, because, especially with Gunnar, because he's Icelandic, and so far there's been a really interesting reaction from Icelanders that I think is worth sharing, and then my reaction because I've been living here and Americans are talked about in the movie, so that's going to be interesting. So let's just start off first though with overall thoughts. So Gunnar, what is your overall feeling about the movie?
I thought it was fun. I didn't expect a National Geographic video. It was a Will Ferrell movie, so that's what I expected. Something silly.
And did you laugh?
Absolutely, but I recommend that you watch it with someone that you think is fun and might enjoy a similar experience.
Yeah, basically not taking it too seriously, because it just, like he said, it's a Will Ferrell movie, and I've read some articles from people who are not from Iceland who were kind of offended on behalf of Icelanders. And granted, not to say there aren't any Icelanders who might be offended by this. This is very possible. But overall, it seems that a lot of Icelanders just found it funny and they liked it that people are talking about them, right? I also enjoyed the movie, but there were certain things that were annoying to me. Funny enough, not the stuff that had to do with Americans, which we kind of get bashed in the movie. Not kind of, we definitely do. Which is a whole nother story, and we will get to that. But overall, I still enjoyed it. And I think I enjoyed it more because we watched it together and you were laughing so much in the movie that I was just like, wow, this is kind of interesting, because these are stereotypes about people from your country and it just wasn't taken that seriously. So that makes it more enjoyable to feel like Icelanders can laugh at themselves, and it kind of felt like I had the ability to laugh along with him because he wasn't offended.
I don't, of course, can't speak for all Icelanders, but I kind of like being made fun of in certain ways, so maybe that's part of it too. And I think that is some part of Icelandic culture that we can laugh at ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Gunnar comes across on camera as super docile, but he makes a lot of jokes. Super calm and as if kind of more serious, but this dude makes a lot of jokes, and so in person, when you get to know him, there's a lot of laughter, there's a lot of jokes about inappropriate things. So I think this movie was kind of right up your alley in that way.
I can see the yes, say neither yes nor no.
He's not going to admit to it. Anyway, but I have some notes here, so we're just going to kind of go over some of the things that I wrote. First of all, the Icelandic. And I am still learning Icelandic, but I know more than enough to understand whether or not something's been pronounced correctly and certain words. So how is the Icelandic in this movie?
From the Icelanders that were acting in it was fine.
Yeah.
But
that's a good way of starting out.
The non-Icelanders, they butchered a lot of things, and sometimes you didn't know what the words were. A lot of times, actually, but at times it was pretty good. Like a few times in the song, Húsavík song, for example, there were a few times where it was clear what they were saying, and that is always impressive and fun to see.
Yeah.
But it would be nice to have really short scenes, especially that could be easily rehearsed, even if it was a nonsense gibberish to the actors, they could still rehearse it.
Yeah, definitely. Pronunciation is not to make it seem like it's easy, but with practice, like you're saying, it doesn't have to be that difficult. And on top of that, they also chose names for the main characters that weren't Icelandic. And there are easy Icelandic names that you could have named them, like Maria, right? Like this is one of those things where it's bizarre that they used Lars, which is not an Icelandic name, it's a Swedish name, I think, right?
Yeah, or Danish.
Or Danish,
something.
yeah. Some other Scandinavian country. And Sigrid, which is, again, there's a Sigrid, Sigriður in Icelandic, but Sigrid is not an Icelandic name. So it was so weird to see that part because, again, it's kind of lazy in a way. It's like someone kind of like took a mix from different places and like, this sounds good, it'll all work, they're all in the same region. And when Pierce Brosnan especially spoke in Icelandic, or attempted to, it sounded like a Swedish type of tone, like his inflections and stuff. So, yeah.
It's kind of like the Hollywood lazy of doing something ethnic, or, like Russian pronunciation. It's often butchered, and you don't get a Russian, you do a Californian that pronounces Russian really horribly. It was very much like that, but Nordic instead of being Icelandic. So whatever Nordic is, and that's usually Swedish sounding with some sing-along inflections.
Yeah.
Even though it's still a bad pronunciation of Swedish too.
And I have nothing against Pierce Brosnan, but I was just curious as to why, and maybe it's a star power thing, as to why they used him for the father, because there are plenty of actors who are Icelandic, and there were a lot of Icelandic actors in the movie. Not to say that those should have been the fathers, but there are plenty of people in this country or who know how to pronounce Icelandic correctly that are of age that could have played in this role, because it was such a small role in the movie. And that part was a little bit confusing and slightly unfortunate. But in the end, again, it's a Hollywood film. It's a Will Ferrell film too. We're not trying to like put too much emphasis, and I don't think it is worth it to be really that critical, because every Will Ferrell movie butchers stuff about whatever culture he's making fun of at that time. But I do think it's fascinating, and that's why I mentioned why Gunnar is here, because having it from a viewpoint of someone who is from here, is this serious enough of being butchered or exaggerated that it maybe hurts the culture? And I think in a way it makes Iceland more interesting to people.
Yeah, I mean, there's like the Elvish stuff. I kind of enjoyed it. There is an element of that among some of our people, that elves, they're to be respected and not slighted unnecessarily, at least, bare minimum. But also fascinating. It's really fascinating stuff. And there is also the element of absolute denial here too. So,
and both of that was in the movie.
Yeah.
So like Sigrid, the Rachel McAdams character, she's the one who really believes in the elves and takes stuff to them. And people do this. And actually a really fascinating story that I heard from a person who's done this with their child, and it's kind of off topic, but I think it kind of feeds into why kids might grow up into adults who believe in elves. So one of your cousin's girlfriends, they have a child together, and the daughter was still using a pacifier. And in order to get the child to stop using the pacifier, the mother told her, there are elf babies that need the pacifier, because now you're too old for the pacifier, so why don't we put it in a little bag, take it to the tree outside in the countryside, and hang it there for the elves, so an elf parent can come and take it and use it for their elf child. And that made the child like really excited about the idea of, first of all, they're helping an elf, and this kind of mystical creature that they're interacting with. So they were willing to do it. And then also when they might cry and want their pacifier, the mom would remind her that, hey, remember we gave it to the elves? And I'd be like, oh, okay. So it was just, I don't know if a lot of parents do that. I just heard it from this one, and I thought it was really funny. And I was like, people really do that?
I've never heard that.
I'll tell you afterwards who it is. It was super fascinating. And yeah, so it's just,
a good idea.
Yeah, it is. And it kind of plays, I mean, when you think about Santa, for instance, right? Like,
tooth fairies.
Yeah, so it's not far-fetched from that type of mythical character, but it's just in an Icelandic way. which Húsavík is really beautiful.
Absolutely.
And there have been times where whales have flipped into the air. It does not happen often, but it can happen. Granted, not necessarily the way it happens in the movie. So, yeah.
No, I was CGI at its less than finest, but
yeah,
it was purposefully so, I guess.
Yeah, which again makes it funny,
Yeah.
but also pretty awesome that technically whales can jump out of the air. You know,
So there was Icelanders use a lot of woolen clothes, you know, sweaters in particular with a certain pattern. Didn't really see that in the movie. I saw more of like really colorful clothes and sweaters, and we're not necessarily known for being really colorful. We're doing some more of that lately, but really unicolor, drab earth colors is more common.
Black
Yeah.
is, and that's why coming from New York, I felt like, oh, this is great, because New York is a place that people wear a lot of black too. And so it was just kind of nice to, in a way, to come to Iceland and everyone's like, black is the color. But like you're saying, that is starting to change up.
Yeah. And there was, I mean, she was shown knitting, I believe, but it wasn't obvious that they were hand knitted, the clothes that you saw the people wearing, and that would have been really cool because it's a strong industry in Iceland.
Yeah. And it's also, when people come to Iceland, one of the things that they've been advised to buy, and I've talked about it in other videos, is an Icelandic lopapeysa that has been processed and knitted here.
Right.
So from Icelandic wool and local artists, because there are people who are selling these sweaters that are made in China and they're made from other materials, but not only are you helping the local economy, but this is a very Icelandic thing. It's almost like a national, identity for the country to have this sweater, because they were very beautiful and they have a traditional lopapeysa and then iterations of that as it's evolved and people have experimented. So yeah, that is true. It would have been nice to have that more represented because it's very Icelandic.
Mm-hmm. I really appreciated also, this is a big spoiler I guess, but a certain thing about Iceland being afraid of winning it because it might bankrupt us.
That's a good point.
That's a really good point that we've discussed many times over, and it was made fun of in a nice way.
Yeah. And what's unfortunate though is that the villain is, the person who's trying to think logically about this and in his own way save the country. It's kind of villainized to be
he's
against.
Also not Icelandic.
Right. Yeah. True. And speaking of that, Eurovision. So neither one of us are big Eurovision fans. I didn't even know about Eurovision until I came to Iceland, and I was like, okay, so everyone's really excited about a European version of America's Got Talent, or whatever. And so I didn't realize that this was it's a huge thing for many countries, and people have like Eurovision parties, and Icelanders get so excited about the potential to be not only in like the semifinals or the final rounds or whatever, but just the idea of going to Eurovision is a huge thing, and who's going to be representing them. And I'm guessing obviously this happens in other countries too. So we still have never like really latched on to this part of the culture, and Gunnar is not that typical Icelandic person anyway. There are a lot of things that it's just like whatever. So how did you feel about the depiction of Eurovision?
I mean, it is true that almost every household in the country is in front of the television. I don't know the actual percentage, but it's enough that there's no traffic during that time. Yeah. So
pretty amazing.
It's pretty huge, percentage-wise.
Yeah.
So I do enjoy that time, but I'm not as passionate about the outcomes. It's just an opportunity to have a party or get together with family.
Yeah. And make fun of acts that you think are silly.
Yeah.
That's, I think, probably the most interesting part. It's like, really? That's their song this year?
Although I must admit, the one that we would have had this year has been my favorite so far. I wanted him to win last time.
Yeah.
He participated too.
And there's this whole conspiracy about how like Daði would have won. This would have been Iceland's year to win.
Or at least top 5.
Yeah. And it didn't work out, obviously because of COVID, but there wasn't, I don't know, are they still doing Eurovision? See, this is how much we know about Eurovision. I'm not even sure if they decided to do something. I should probably look that up.
There, I think it's just next year.
Yeah. So anyway, but Daði Freyr was, and still makes a lot of music, and it's super fascinating. He somewhat has a resemblance to Gunnar, not completely, but like there's a long hair thing, and like, you know what I mean? It's one of those funny things. And he's a bit quirky, and his music style is, like, he has a really nice voice, but his quirkiness is really what makes it endearing, right? Because he's like super tall and does these dances. Just like, who comes up with this? So, yeah.
He seems like a nice, fun guy.
Mm-hmm.
And it's nice that someone can be purposefully awkward.
Mm-hmm. And accepted.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it's a nice image to have because it isn't offensive, or I don't even think he's always trying. I think he's just kind of an awkward person. And that's okay. And it's nice to have, like, your space in the music world for that.
Maybe we can put a link to the song after in the this video.
Okay, so I'll put a link, because Gunnar is excited about that, to the song that would have potentially won
Absolutely.
Eurovision. Think About Things is what I think it's called. Maybe. Yes!
I'm not good at the names, but
Okay.
I've heard the song.
I'm pretty sure it's Think About Things. Alright, what's some other things here? Alright, so making fun of Americans. So I mentioned that earlier. And in the movie, there are a group of what look like potential, like, backpackers, or just like a bunch of kids who are from the US. And Will Ferrell's character, who is supposed to be Icelandic, essentially is pretty aggressive towards them about how much he doesn't like Americans, and that they trash Europe and they need to get out of Iceland. Like, it's really, really intense. And those same kids end up at where was it? In Scotland? Edinburgh, right?
That's the whole time he sees them there. Then they end up...
Yeah, you're right. Okay. So that is true. So he meets them in Edinburgh, gets mad at them at this fountain or whatever, and then later they're in Iceland.
Yes.
Yeah, at the party. Okay, yeah. You're right. And that part was, it was just like, at first when he did it at the fountain, it was like, okay, haha, you know, Starbucks, totally. And then later on in the movie when it's about to end, and he's like, no, really, I hate you, get out. And I was like, damn. Now, I was not offended, but I was like, okay, I mean, thanks, Will Ferrell. But he also, like, throws in these jabs about politics without saying it exactly, like the whole build a wall thing. He says that at the fountain, you know, and it's like this idea around how Americans are perceived. Because right now, to be fair, in the US, not before coronavirus and all of that, a lot of Europeans, and I speak specifically maybe just for Iceland, but here I've gotten a lot of questions about, like, what is going on in the US? Why do people vote for this individual? You know, things like that. It was a lot of confusion, and that part has really, I think, changed people's perception about the US as well. And tourism in Iceland has been fueled by a lot of US people coming here. They're by far the biggest group of tourists that come to Iceland on average every year. So that also means that there's behaviors that sometimes get attributed to Americans. Sometimes it's them, sometimes it's not, but still, biggest tourism group, and that then shapes Icelanders' views too. So maybe you could speak a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, historically that has been a fun pastime. If you get the opportunity to bash in America, it's kind of exciting, because it's a much bigger country, much more powerful, you know, in every way, shape, and form, really. But they still manage to do so many things poorly. So, like Icelanders, they're called the smallest, biggest nation in the world, kind of, and we have, I think, enjoyment from that. Not perhaps in such a mean way as it comes across in the movie.
Yeah, it's pretty mean in the movie.
But I don't know. You know, maybe some people are like that. I just happen to be different. Mm-hmm. Even though I like to definitely criticize. That's one of my favorite pastimes.
Yeah, and there are definitely things to joke about that happen in the US, whether they're more serious or not. And this was an opportunity, I guess, too, for Will Ferrell to voice maybe some of his like of the exaggerated views that he thinks Europeans have, at least Icelanders have, of people from the US.
Yeah. So like the movie is an exaggeration of everything.
Yeah.
So why wouldn't they exaggerate this?
Yeah, true. So if you're from the US and you get offended, I don't know what to say to you besides it's just a joke. It's not meant that every Icelander feels this way. And obviously Icelanders would like people from the US to come just as long as they're respectful.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much it. That isn't... There isn't much more to kind of give attention to that one. But I think coming from the US, I had to say that mainly because I feel like there will be some people who get offended by it just because they're taking it out of context of this movie that is a huge exaggeration of everything. We'd love to hear in the comments what you thought about it. There are Icelanders that subscribe to this channel, so feel free to let us know how you felt about the movie. There are people from many different countries, so we'd love to just kind of interact with you in the comments about that. As well as, if you haven't already, make sure that you subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on more videos that are coming your way. And I am very happy about the fact that we got to have Gunnar again on the channel to give his view about this movie. And I hope that all of you get a chance to enjoy it. If you did enjoy it, that's okay too. But if you did, good to hear. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.